Hey guys, what's going on? Shah here, and this has been an absolutely crazy week. Probably like most of you, I've been just playing this game all day, all night, so I'm sorry for the lack of content over the last week. There hasn't been a lot for me to talk about. I have streamed a few times, so thank you for those who caught me over there. If you'd like to see me stream and just kind of play the game, you can go check me out. You can find that link on the YouTube channel, and I will also leave a description down below for those who are interested. So you can always check me out there. If you're ever missing content or you want to just see me play either Guardian Druid or another kind of specialization, whether it's in Keys or in Raid, definitely check me out. Now, I was really waiting for something to kind of actually show you guys, and I finally was able to time a nice fat Theater of Pain level 13 key, and I just kind of wanted to walk through and talk about exactly what was going through my head or my group's head. We've been able to run this dungeon a fair bit, but it's not a dungeon like we saw at the end of BFA where we ran Freehold 600 times over the 2 years. So a lot of these dungeons are new for some of these players. A lot of them are, the routes are new to me, playing around Prideful, obviously with the scaling. I don't have necessarily the best in slot gear, the best in slot legendary, or at least the highest rank of the legendary, I should say. So this run was super close. I'm going to just talk about some kind of key things throughout the run. I'm going to skip around in this video to kind of show you exactly what pulls you should maybe be wary of, what the route looked like, some kind of niche things that my comp did. I was running an Outlaw Rogue, Fire Mage, and an Unholy Death Knight in here with Egg, my Holy Paladin, healing me. And of course, I'm on Guardian Druid. We're going to kind of just jump right in here. So I'm going to be skipping around a fair bit. So Theater of Pain 13. Now, something that you will see me do here, let's just back this up actually. So right when the key goes in, right before I slot it, you're going to see actually up in this corner that I pop Incarnation and Ravenous Frenzy. Yes, I am playing Venthyr. I know it's not a popular choice. I like the Venthyr feeling. It really amps up your survivability with Incarnation, and it gives my healer the option to not use cooldowns during these 30 seconds. So I'm going to pop them both on pull. If you're lucky with Ravenous Frenzy, if you are a Guardian Druid who's playing Ravenous Frenzy, you can actually somehow, you can snapshot these stacks and have them keep going up as you're doing, as the key is starting. And if you spam Thrash, you can see my rage is just pooling down in this corner here. So I'm going to Stampeding Roar. That is going to give me another stack. And hopefully what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get as high stacks as possible. So when I hit this first pack here, I'm going to have maximum aggro, because that's a big thing that a lot of people have been experiencing this week. And actually Blizzard plans to hotfix it, is that tanks just are struggling right now with threat. So being able to have that fat damage buff is going to be pretty huge here. Now what's going on in this poll is that we have popped Hero. We have just popped most of our cooldowns. So Combustion was popped by the Mage. Paladin has Wings, and our Unholy Decay used his Apocalypse. So we're just blowing up this pack. Now what I'm doing is I'm targeting this Raging Bloodhorn, because this mob has a really nasty Enrage effect. While the Enrage is active, it's actually a channeled cast that's going to be doing physical damage to your whole party. You'll see it here, this Raging Tantrum. You can soothe this and it stops the cast. So you'll see me soothe here. It goes on cooldown and it stops the cast, so my healer doesn't even have to really heal here. So essentially what was happening during this pull was my DPS were focusing everything else, and I was focusing the Raging Bloodhorn to make sure we're getting that soothe. Now, this first boss, to be completely honest, I don't know what goes on, if I'm being completely honest. There's just so much random stuff. There's obviously going to be melee from Desia, and then we have Packerin as well as this other dude, I don't even know his name. These two casts, this middle guy does kind of some tank buster abilities on the tank, so this is the one you're going to want to be focusing Desia. He does a Mortal Strike and a Slam. He's essentially a warrior, so the Slam is going to be kind of not a frontal, but it's going to be a nice tank buster, and then the Mortal Strike is going to actually apply a debuff to you. You're going to want to make sure you're mitigating for these two things. And if you are playing a Guardian Druid, I'm sure a lot of you guys are, or at least you're aware of it, you can soothe Desia when she enrages. When she enrages, she fixates on one of your party members, chasing them down. So you just kind of want to be aware of that. Honestly, the best practice for this fight is making sure you're baiting these pools to the outside of the room, and you're going to want to kite around this inner little, what is this, a pentagon, 5 sides? Yeah, so you're going to want to just kind of kite around. When it goes in melee, it gets a little bit messy, and it's something that you really don't want to happen because this floor space gets cluttered. So here's that rage buff. Oops, we actually missed it here. So I'm going to back up a few seconds. So that Mortal Strike is going to leave a debuff on you. And then you're going to see here that she is going to fixate. So this fixate is going to target one of my party members, and you can actually soothe this. I think so. Rogues can also shiv this off, and so can hunters. I think that's the only 3 classes that can soothe actually. So making sure you're doing that. I recommend getting Decia down first, so the tank can actually worry about like not having to die, because this is the only mob that's actually going to be dangerous during this fight. We're actually going to skip though through this boss fight. It's not too difficult. It's really just like cleave what you can. I'll do a guide on it at some point. I just kind of want to talk about this run in particular. So up to this point, we're looking really good. We're 3 minutes in. We have hero on cooldown, which is what we wanted because we want to maximize heroes in this dungeon, and we have 0 deaths. So there is a fair bit of RP here, but once we get down to the bottom, I've decided to go to the Altars of Agony first, and the reason for this is because I want to get through this wing in 7 minutes to have hero for the boss. I was hoping to have hero actually a little bit sooner. I was actually assuming that this pole would actually, or this wing would take a little bit longer. So at the very start of this, there's this like gauntlet, and this gauntlet's kind of annoying, especially to like tank them out there. So I grabbed the front half, and we actually pull them back out of the hallway so no one has to worry about swirlies, and we just keep AoEing and kicking them as we can. Once this pull dies, we actually go for a Shroud here. So the group kind of piles up. I use Roar as soon as Shroud goes out. So I use Roar for the group so they get through. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get through here, around the corner, and LOS. So I can just grab these mobs and no one else gets bound, and then I can pop a defensive if I need, because up to this point I haven't had to use anything. I still have Survival. I have Incarn if I need to. I have Double Frenzied, and I have Roar. So I have ways to stop the cast, and I have ways to survive. So essentially the goal was to get everything lined up and stacked up on this side to line of sight, because honestly, when you're out there, there's just a lot of spread damage. There's a lot of, swirls that are going to be on the ground that you want to be dodging. And if you see how low people are getting here from those binds, if you get hit by a swirl as well, you're probably dead. So we opt to use AMZ here. AMZ is a really good cooldown. Death Knights have become increasingly popular in keys, not just for their damage, but for their raid cooldown now. It's going to help with bursting, but it's also going to help with these big pulls like this where there's a lot of magic damage. This Portal Guardian isn't too difficult. It's a fair bit of like group damage, but honestly, it's like a healer cooldown should be able to get you through this. So A actually pops wings here, so we're able to just keep everyone topped off. I should be tracking his Bastion. He's a Bastion or a Kyrian, so he has that Divine Toll, which he can Holy Shock all 5 people in the party if needed. I go for a Dispel here. As a Druid player, if you ever see a curse out and if you're not taking a heavy amount of damage, try to decurse, because typically curses are bad. It's either going to give a debuff for stats, or it's going to like make them silence, or it's going to make them take increased damage. So you're going to want to remove that curse if possible. Second Soul Storm goes out, and we actually here decide to go right. Now, some of you guys might have seen me run on beta a lot, or if you've seen me run this key before, or even in my guide, I tell everyone to go double right. So you go right here, then you go right after the next Portal Guardian. In this run, you're going to see we're actually going to opt to go to the left in the second portal. But this first one, we're going to go right, and it's because it's the least amount of trash. It's going to require 4 kicks here, which we have access to, and this is going to give us Prideful without going too far over. One thing about these Bone Magi, or Magus, you're going to want to kick this Bone Spear. This Bone Spear does so much damage. So they cast Bone Spike and Bone Spear. Bone Spike is light damage. You don't have to kick it. You should try to kick everything. This Bone Spear is like a 5-second cast. Oops, sorry. This Bone Spear is like a 5-second cast, but if it does go off, it's going to chunk. And I can't remember if it was in this key later on in a different pull, but I think someone gets one shot by it. So you obviously don't want that to happen. We kill them both at the same time. Prideful spawns. We don't have a lot of room to work with, but when there's no other mobs nearby, it's actually not that bad. So what I end up doing is, what we try to do here, it's a little bit difficult because we have 4 melee. So myself, 2 melee DPS, and then the Holy Paladins are typically in melee healing. Egg will back out if needed, but what we do is we just kind of shift around. So we call for the player who it's on. So for like example right here, it's on Dave. So Dave's going to just sit there. DPS are either going to back out or move forward. He should, I guess in hindsight, should be a little bit further back. We're going to see that Egg's there. Egg's not going to move. We're going to shift over as needed. It is a little bit more difficult when you have more melee, just because you have a higher chance of cleaving people. When you only have 2 or 3 melee, you can position around him and not have to move at all. But see here, Egg has to move forward in this situation, then he has to move back, and it just kind of puts us in an awkward spot. It's really not that big of an issue, but you definitely don't want to get cleaved or stunned. Your healer or your tank don't want to get stunned because those are the two players who are going to keep your group alive in this situation. The tank's going to keep himself alive, and the healer's going to be able to obviously keep the group alive. This is a platform that you have to do. It is a Portal Guardian followed by a Soulbinder and another Bone Magus. I recommend killing the Bone Magus, and when the Soulstorm goes off, this is when you're going to want to use some kind of cooldown. We have AMZ backup. I think we use it here, but we'll double check. The Soulbinder Necrotic Bolt's annoying because it applies, if you see here, oops, we'll let the next, I guess we'll wait for the next cast. It applies an absorb, a healing absorb. So you're going to want to make sure you kick those at all costs, but the Soul Bolt volley is going to be really important to kick because it doesn't just apply to one person, but it applies it to all four. So AMZ goes down here, and we overlap it with, not overlap, but we pair it with wings because this is a dangerous pull. And I think what happened there is Bone Spear got off. I'm going to just double check actually. No, Bone Spear did not get off. So Necrotic Bolt, I think here. Necrotic Bolt gets off, hits, and I think hits ZNT, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a very dangerous pull. I recommend using cooldowns here. We had Prideful buff, so we thought we can get through it, but inevitably there was not a one-shot because he was low. We just weren't able to top him off, but I guess that's in hindsight, I guess the healing could have been a little bit better here. But still a pretty good job. We're feeling good. We're going to take this orb. Dave's going to grab it, and he's going to put it on the left-hand side. I'm checking this out. So he died to Soul Corruption, which is just actually like the AoE damage from the Portal Guardian. Going left here is going to be... I'm so torn because this route is going to be better if you have like all melee. Range have a little bit harder time, I guess, dodging the Death Winds. But there's going to be less kicks in this pull, which is going to be a little bit better for range. So I'm really torn on what to do here. But the Death Winds can be pretty deadly, especially if you get knocked back into any of these side packs on either the left or right side of this platform, which you can now see here. You want to stay in the center lane at all costs because this is extra trash you don't want because you're already going to be over % for the most part in this dungeon anyways. And these guys are already scary enough and put out a lot of damage with their curses and their Spirit Frost that pulling these additional mobs is not gonna help you out in the slightest. So just making sure you're dodge. If you do get knocked back and you're in the middle of the platform, it's not as scary, but if you're a range player standing on the edge of the platform, you gotta really be careful of Death Winds. They do put out a curse on players that like drops a pool and it kind of just does ticking damage over time. You want to make sure you dispel that. So at this point, we're having Dave just dispel it almost instantly. I also help out here, so I did remove corruption on him that time because I think he was trying to dodge Death Winds. But for the most part, he's going to be dispelling himself on cooldown because, you know, if you have the luxury of reducing damage, you might as well. So I went this way hoping that Hero would be up for this next platform because this platform is super, super sketchy. You could try to pull more for Hero, but it's really hard to skip later on in the dungeon. So we just ended up going to this next pull. Now, if you're in this dungeon, whether you're with a group or a pug, make sure you are the first player to go through this portal. If you are not the first player through, Cutulate went a little early, but I think it ends up being okay, is that these mobs will just aggro and probably melee you and you're dead. Like, it's just super, super quick. So what we do here is the first player's up, we bait to the opposite portal, and I bait over to this platform because when Death Winds comes off, it might target at this portal, and if there is a player who's a little bit late, it really sucks. Right when you land, you get knocked off and you have no way to dodge it. So this pull is super sketch. You don't have to kick Spirit Frost. You want to kick Necrotic Bolt Volley, and the Bone Magus cast in general. So there's a lot of kicks here, plus there's a curse going off, and you're on this tiny, tiny little platform. So we AMZ here to help reduce some of the damage, and we are just making sure we're locking down this Necrotic Bolt. I'm not really sure what the priority target would be here. I would say the Bone Magus, but the Death Winds is really annoying to deal with as well. So honestly, use cooldowns here, blow up everything you can, and then for us, Hero came up here. So we'll skip forward. Let's see. So we're going to pretty much go right into pull on Coldrock. We're going to Hero here. The biggest thing here is just making sure the healer knows priority dispels. What do I mean by this? I mean that, so this one, let's see, well, who did it go on first? So what I mean by a priority dispel is right off the bat, he's going to put out this debuff. It's going to go on Dave and on Cutulate. Egg knows who to dispel based on what kind of cooldowns are up. So Dave is a Clothy with less self-healing, and Cutulate has Cloak of Shadows up in case he's in trouble. So what Egg does as a super smart player he dispels Dave, the mage, and lets Cutulate take the dot. The dot does a lot of damage, but he knows that if there is some kind of trouble, that Cutilate 1 has more self-healing, 2 has shadows as well. The big thing here is when Draw Soul comes out, make sure you're standing in the hands. If you're not standing in the hands, your soul like runs around and keeps you silenced and you can't do any abilities, and you just take metric fuckloads of damage. So AMS works. You can AMS it off as a DK. I think you can Cloak of Shadows it, the Draw Soul. But Dave had to move into the hands here. So again, same thing. Priority Dispel. It's on Cutilate and it's on me. He goes, I think he dispels Cutilate here because 1, I'm the tank. I have Beacon on me, so all the healing that Egg is doing is being channeled into me, and I have double Frenzy to recharge, and I have Renewal up still. So again, Egg being the genius he is dispelling the people that needs to be dispelled before the other. So it's just managing that. So healers, if you don't have Omni CD, good, really good add-on to get, or just playing with groups and knowing what classes can do what is also a really good thing to have. That's pretty much the fight though. I'm not going to sit here and talk about through the whole thing. Right after the boss dies, what I actually do is I use Roar here. It's on cooldown in this tiny corner, and you can actually just jump right over this edge. It's such a tiny thing, but this play right here, roaring right after the boss dies and jumping down this platform, saves us, like, it's minor. It's really, really minor, but this saves us about 2 seconds, because when you take the portal, it does this little like squiggly thing through the air, and then you land off to the side. So if you're able to just jump off the edge, which you actually don't need a speed boost for, it's the tiniest amount effective, but if you fail a key by a second or 2, that could have been the play. It's really, really minor. Here, I'm just making sure we have cooldowns up. This is a big pull that I like to do just because you can blow it up all really quickly. I drop Ursol's, I pop Incarnation. I see that Dave has Combust, and we have Apocalypse ready. So I'm pretty certain that this pull is going to die really, really quickly. The big thing here is this Blighted Sludge Spewer, and this Withering Discharge has to be kicked. Outside of that, this pull is not difficult. Just honestly, if you're the tank, just target this Sludge Spewer and just make sure you have kick ready. That's pretty much like the big thing here. And then right after this pull is over, we're going to get Prideful again. So in this case, where Prideful Light is spawning and you still have some ads up, try to finish the ads if you can, but you're probably going to want to end up prioritizing the Prideful mob and cleaving off, and just make sure the tank or whoever needs to, like, maybe if there's like kicks from the certain mob that's still up, just making sure you're doing that. Again, this is where there's an issue with having like all the melee in the world, is that melee gets a little clustered with this like spear debuff thing that shoots out from the player. Just make sure you're avoiding it at all costs. It's not really a problem. Dave is repositioning himself properly, so if it's on him, it's going to go off to these sides and not hit any melee. But outside of that, we're going to really make use of this buff. Back here, we do another kind of big pull. We blast it down. We go into the next pull as well. There's now 2 Sludge Spewers, so you have to assign 1 melee kick to each minimum. And the melee kick should be watching the Withering Discharge. You should be kicking everything else if you can, but you need to make sure you have some kind of lock for those abilities. And what a lot of people don't know about this Putrid Butcher is that he does this thing called Devour Flesh. And when he does Devour Flesh, he heals for like a percentage of the damage he does to the tank. So the more damage he does to you, the more damage or the more health he's going to heal for. So you're going to want to make sure you need to like rotate Survival or rotate like Barkskin out, or rotate like a defensive like Sacrifice. I didn't do that there. That was my mistake. It would have maybe made the pull go a little bit faster, but in hindsight, I should have just done that. This mob is super nasty. There's a lot of ticking damage. He has an aura. It doesn't give you a debuff, but there's an aura on him that inflicts 1,000 nature damage every 2 seconds. I think it was a little bit higher than that. It felt like we were ticking down a lot faster than 1k. Like he went from 12k to 9k and then 9k to 6k. So we actually, I think, end up losing ZNT here, but we finished this pull pretty easily. And then ZNT died, so we have to wait for the run back. This is probably what killed the most time on the run. It would have been a lot quicker of a dungeon if this wasn't the case, but ZNT died on the last pull, and he released. So a big thing in dungeons, guys, like if you're a DPS or if anything, or if you're a tank, you need to vocalize, like, don't release. Like, this mob's about to die. It's quicker for us to get the res than for you to release and run back, because DKs are really slow. If it was Dave on Mage, or if it was Cutilate on his Rogue, it would have been a little bit faster, but like, just don't. If you die, don't release unless like you're given the okay to. Next pull I'm going to have Incarn for, so this mob's going to die pretty quickly. There is a Sludge Spewer in this pull, which is going to be priority. and just make sure you kind of blow everything up. Again, there are these the butcher here, just making sure that you're mitigating for the butcher's devour flesh. Now what I'm trying to do here is I see that we're at 58%, and when this guy dies we're going to be at like 59 something. So I'm trying to like sneak up. Yeah, we're at 59.78. You can see down in this like tiny corner right above my little like Farseer shot thing. So I'm trying to not pull this the big dude in the middle, the big farty guy, and I'm trying to pull these little mobs back and try to nuke them down. These mobs aren't elite, so they die pretty quickly. 55k health on fortified, 13, and we're gonna get prideful here. Now, a lot of mistakes happened on this pull. We didn't miss anything, but I think some people were getting clipped. I got clipped here by the kind of sludge on the ground, so I had to get a dispel, which isn't big. Like if more than one person gets hit, it's kind of an issue. And the other issue is that we left up a sludge spewer, and we're in this super tight corner. So Dave is in melee here. He stuns all three. He stuns Cutilate, who uses his human racial. He stuns ZNT and Egg. And because of this, it puts Egg behind a few globals. And I think we get stunned again, and we end up actually like losing most people this pull. So again, you want to try to cleave off of the prideful ad if you can, but sometimes you just need to prioritize the right target. So this is also really awkward right here. This is actually my fault for doing this. I should have ran out further when I saw that I had the debuff on me, but like we're just clustered in a really tight spot. You want to try to pull prideful ads to the most open area possible. That is going to help you get through this key. If not, this thing happens. Everyone takes a big tick. Everyone's super low. I'm up against the wall here, and I end up stunning Cutilate and killing Egg. And because we now don't have a healer, every tick is going to be pretty much just a wipe. So we're hoping to burst him down quick enough. I'm trying to get enough rage for a battle res. We get it off, but Egg asks me if he should take it. And I say yes, and 2 more DPS died. And then as soon as he gets up, ZNT, I think here, gets stunned. So he gets clipped by that debuff that I had on me and dies. So this was like the worst thing that can happen. We actually thought the key was burnt at this point, or at least I did. Cutilate releases because I gave him the okay to, because I thought it was going to be a wipe. But the other two stay dead, and we end up killing it. But huge waste on the prideful buff. You never want to sit on this prideful buff at all. 50, it gives you 60 seconds, and I think we ended up sitting here for at least 10, because we had to get res off, and then we had to get a few heals out. And I had to pull some rage back up by shifting into bear form and getting over here. And for some reason, I'm actually back at 80 rage, which is really weird. That's supposed to reset. But wasting 15 seconds of prideful is nothing you really want to do. We lost food buffs across the board. Cutilate's still running back, and he didn't get prideful because he released, because he was out of range. So just an entire shit show here. This mob is weird. You can either pull, I recommend pulling him back as he drops the sludge. Just don't stand in the frontals. We're going to skip forward. Next pull. We've seen this mobs before. Just make sure you're mitigating for the butcher. Not too much going on here. And then lastly, we have Gorechop in this wing. Gorechop is a pretty fun boss, but can be pretty punishing if you get screwed by one of the walls, one of the hooks that come down. My strategy here is to tank him in the center of the room, and then I back him up after the grip. So whenever the grip goes off, he spawns like a ring around him. It's typically Hateful Strike, and then he grips everyone in as the wall comes down, and then you want to position your group near one of the openings so they don't have to frantically try to search for it. And then as mobs die, I tried to keep them on this side of the room, and then when they die, I move them back to the middle. But unfortunately, I moved back to the middle of the room kind of quickly, and then the mobs died on top of him, which left us with like not a lot of space. So this room is really about maximizing floor space. It's not really that bad of a deal, because I think every third spawn, the first pool will disappear. But you want to make sure that this is going to be clean for melee so they can position themselves where it's needed, because stepping in this pool is just extra damage that the healer has to heal through. But for the most part, this fight isn't too difficult, but I'm not going to sit here and like make you guys watch this. We ended up killing him pretty clean. Casters have a pretty hard time on this boss, and melee normally don't. As you can see here, Fire Mage, even with Combust and everything up at the start of the pull, and Hero still pretty low just because of the how crazy movement intensive this fight is. But we were able to have Hero, so we were able to have Hero on first pull of the dungeon, second boss, and third boss. And then the idea is that now, because we used it on third boss, it's going to be up in time for the last boss, which is where we feel like we're going to need it as a group. We could maybe position our timings a little bit better, but I feel like we would get one less hero, which is exactly why we optimized it to hero on the very first pull of the dungeon. This next wing is really scary, and I always debate going this place first just because of how dangerous it is. So if you know you're going to wipe the key, you're going to wipe it in this wing more than likely, especially as a tank player and especially during week 1 because tanks are so floppy. Like we flop over after like 3 autos. So it's really difficult to get this wing down. In these first couple of pulls, you want to make sure you're focusing the Arbalest. That's kind of like the big mob here. And then these conscripts just do like a lot of melee damage. So using something like I have Incarnation rolling right now, which is fine. So these guys are probably gonna be close to dead by the time I really need it. And then you want to pray that you don't get the Brutalizer. The Mangler is a lot easier to deal with, especially as a Guardian Druid. The Brutalizer just does insane amount of hits. And if you're not a tank who blocks, it's really difficult to like handle him, or a tank who can't really kite. Guardian Druids aren't Demon Hunters or Monks, and those two classes have a really easy time like rolling away or jumping away from his Savage Flurry. Or Warriors have a good time blocking it. But Guardian Druids literally have to face tank it, and it normally doesn't work out in their favor. So we got lucky here with Nexara, the Mangler. And what he does is he does a Whirlwind, he throws a Blade, and then he does an Interrupting Shout. So there's actually like no Tank Buster mechanic, which is super, super nice. So I just chain pulled this because I wanted Dave to get a good combust onto the Mangler while also cleaving down these ads to help him catch up in DPS and just to like get our prideful buff. So these dudes are worth a lot. These mini bosses are worth like 7%. So we're going to get prideful right after this pull. Now what you see me doing here is I'm backing up into the hallway because what you need to do is you need to activate a certain threshold. You need to move into this like area far enough to activate the RP of the next pack. The mobs are typically fighting. This saves like the most, like the tiniest amount of time if you can pull it off or if you can have someone do it for you. But in the long run, it wasn't really worth. So I backed into here, but I didn't back up far enough to actually start the RP. You'll see later that they're still fighting when we get over there and we have to wait for them to like stop fighting for a couple seconds. But again, it's little things like that that will make or break this key. So just want to note that. So we ended up killing him. Oops. So we're going to fast forward. Prideful buff. We have this nice big room to position ourselves in. Dave's going to position right behind me because he sees that they're going out in this X formation. So if he's behind me, it'll never hit melee. It'll go in the same direction that it was going off of me. And then the melee are stacking behind and we're moving appropriately. We get the prideful buff and we're actually going to move down to the next. And this is what I'm talking about here is that these mobs are still RPing as we break this threshold. So when we get down here, we have to kind of like wait for a second. And then on top of that, what happens here is that Cutilate, because he was the closest target, actually pulls aggro and gets meleeed. And that's why it's important to start RP as well, is because when I'm running down these stairs, instead of waiting for her to activate and then have the chance of her hitting one of my DPS, I'm actually, like, I would be able to taunt her right away and, like, get some damage onto her before any of my melee even have the chance to get one shot. I think this is, if this was like a 14 or a 15, he might have been dead. Luckily, I think he still has his cheat death actually right here, so it's actually fine. This is also a really good mob for tanks for at least Guardian Druids to tank because she doesn't really do that many tank buster abilities. She does this Battle Trance, which is like a rage effect. So even if it doesn't get kicked, you can soothe it, which is awesome. And then she does this Bloodthirsty Charge, and then she does like, I think she does Ricocheting Blade. So nothing is on the tank here. So this is another really good one. The other one has a tank buster ability, which is just not good to have. After this pull goes down, so I fast forwarded here, this middle dude, he's a captain. What we actually have ZNT do is he's casting right here. He's casting Control Undead. Control Undead actually allows you to take this guy and cast Demoralizing Shout on these mobs to have them do reduced damage. And it gives your group an aura that you'll see right here. So this aura right here, this like, it looks like the Fury Warrior symbol. This buff gives us increased damage and reduces the damage we take. But it's by a very like minor amount, like very insignificant, but it's enough to help us get through this pull. So on Holy Decays, just keep in mind that you can control this captain here. You'll probably need him, depending on what you pulled before in the dungeon, you'll probably need him. Oh wait, actually right here. So you can actually see what exactly is the buff. So let's see, I hovered over it for a second. So right here, so increases all damage by 2%. So it's a really small damage increase, but it's a 5% like area damage of effect taken, which is not too shabby. So we take him mainly because he's one less target we have to worry about hitting me in the face, and we can just blow up these mobs. And then once those packs go down, ZNT ends up releasing the captain, and we end up killing it. Now, issue, or something you need to be careful of if you are mind controlling this, is ZNT, one, didn't use IBF when he released it, and the captain, I'm pretty sure, like, turned and one-shot him. So yeah, he's even dead here. So Jesus, how far do I have to go back? So what happened is we called for release because most of these mobs were dead, and then he, I think, like immediately turns. Let's see. Once he was like, so he's released and instantly kills ZNT, which set us back pretty far because not only are we now down a DPS, he waits a little bit to res, and then releases, and now has to run all the way back. So this killed a lot of the key for us. We had 9 minutes left at this point. It was kind of already tight, and there's multiple circumstances or multiple situations where people have released when they shouldn't have, and that's definitely taking time off the key. So that mob goes down. We verse Advent Nevermore, another good non-tank buster mob. We got like really lucky with this run, or at least I got lucky with it, and they're not going to be doing any tank damage to us. They're going to do this Unbreakable Guard, which is a frontal like defensive shield where everyone needs to be behind her to do damage. She does Ricocheting Blade, and then she does like another like AoE. I think it's like Stomp or something like that, where it just does AoE damage. So Seismic Stomp. Heal through that and be behind her at all times if you can, and then Ricocheting Blade needs to be moved out, but not too much to it. And then here we're going to get our last Prideful mob going up to Zav, the Unfallen. Skipping ahead, we're about to pull him. We don't have Hero yet. We do have Prideful. We're not going to Hero on him because we're going to have it for the last boss. We have 6 minutes left at this point. It's going to be really close. We're hoping to get him down quickly, but unfortunately, we had some issues with people dying to the slam. And I think what happened here is actually like, I think the banner was up still. Yeah, or the banner actually wasn't up. So we had issues getting out of the circle. So if you're, you know, a DPS player, or actually any player in this fight, make sure you're prioritizing your movement here first before anything else. So I do get a battle res here, which isn't that bad of a big of a deal. We still have one left for the last boss if needed. I'm pulling Rage for his combo, and then Oppressive Banner comes out. Oppressive Banner you want to swap to almost immediately because most classes can't just like easily negate the movement impairing effect that applies. And the issue with Druids, I'm not sure if this is still a bug, but if you're a Druid and you shift to try to sprint out, it doesn't actually drop the debuff, it actually stacks it right up to 5. So if you're a Druid player, just be careful when you're shifting on this fight. The big thing here is just dodging cleaves. And that's pretty much the fight. So we're going to just kind of tank and spank. So we have 3 minutes left. I'm calling out here. I'm like, all right, guys, if we play this last fight clean, like this is a timed key. We've lost 45 seconds already, and we've lost a fair bit of time with like run backs and not having food buffs and stuff. But we're looking good. The time it takes to get back to this point and have RP start typically takes about 30 to 45 seconds. So we're going to skip ahead twice here. And the start of the fight pretty much is going to be right at that like 2.5 minute mark. Oops, I am clicking all the wrong things. Sorry, guys. So pre-pot here, 2:45. We have 2 minutes and 45 seconds to actually defeat this boss. And this boss is super scary. So we're going to actually blow most of our cooldowns on pull. So Hero, Combust goes off. Probably Apocalypse there, and I think Egg might hold wings for a little bit. So Reaping Scythe is the big tank buster. You just want to make sure you're using something for it. I figured that first hit wasn't going to be an issue, even if I did dip low. I had everything. I had Frenzied, I still have Barkskin. I don't have Survival, but I have Renewal still, so I knew that it was fine. Dark Devastation is the big thing that, it's not bad in the first phase, but in the second phase, there's a lot of weird overlaps. And then here, the Rift, I always kind of face away, and I kind of like walk backwards, because then you almost stay in the same spot. And then our rule for these ads spawning is that the DPS will always kick their own ad, and the healer should typically try to position themselves in the middle. So what you do is everyone kicks their own ad, and then you group up on where the healer dropped their ad, and then you can blow it all up with like CDs or AoE or whatever it may be. The big thing here is when she hits 50%, she phases. So, and it will interrupt. So she's mid Dark Devastation, and she hits 50%, and then she stops her cast. And Echoes of Carnage is going to burst damage us every time they're summoned. So Echoes goes out. We want to dodge these contenders. And then the next overlap is super deadly. So make sure you're mitigating Reaping Scythe. I did pop an Iron for right before that. And then this next charge is super scary. So here's what I always recommend. Dark Devastation is going to go off before the charge starts. So what you need to do here is when Dark Devastation starts casting, you need to position yourself on the opposite side of her. So what you should be doing is, okay, it's facing this way. It's facing over to this corner. So we should be trying to get to this corner here, because it does typically almost like 160 degrees. So it does like almost half the room. But here we had some people in the middle. ZNT was in a really bad spot here. I was starting to move this way, but then I saw it, like I just kind of started panic because this thing was coming through. So I panicked here and I ran through, but I'm a tank, right? ZNT dies. because of the damage. And I get a battle res on him and the rift comes out again. So that's like a big thing, is that overlap is super sketchy. That's how it should work out, like how I explained it, but what happened was not optimal at all. And then that thing here is just a lot of damage. So when that grasping rift goes off, it does a burst damage for AoE. The death bolts going off are going to do a lot of damage. So you just want to make sure you're kicking as much as possible. And on this difficulty, even on a fortified, we're going to see one more overlap. So we're going to see Dark Devastation. Charges going off at the same time. DPS should either be on the outside of the room or trying to get to this corner here, because she's facing where Cutilate is right now. So charge goes off. They're overlapping at the exact same time. So Dave and I are in a good position. Egg's in a good position. Z and T is... I don't know what he's doing in the middle here, but that's okay. We end up timing the key. So he gets hits by the charge, not Dark Devastation. So the charge hits him. Dark Devastation goes off. And then this is typically where we finish the fight. So after the second Grasping Rift, the next two get really, really easy. So if you can make through that some people like to save hero for that middle part. It is super sketchy. It's a good healer cooldown if you need to. But honestly, we just were kind of like YOLOing this. We didn't have exactly planned out. We just wanted to get hero on cooldown. So this, again, this charge now isn't overlap. The charge will come before the Dark Devastation. So now once the Dark Devastation is there, we can position ourselves properly. Dave is starting to move to the right. It chases him, but he blinks off to the even further, and we just stay behind him, and this is a kill for us. So we have like 30 seconds left on the timer right now, 2%, and then down to 1%, and that's pretty much the key. So this was like the first key I was really excited for. Don't even ask about the other side. We failed it by like 2 minutes. It was a sad day, but this key felt really good to run. It was kind of our first big key. At the time of this run, at least, okay, so like for US Guardian Druids, this was one of the best Theater of Pains ran on the leaderboard when this key was complete. So that's why I wanted to kind of talk about it. I've been having like a ton of fun pushing keys. I've been having a ton of fun like just running keys back to back, trying different strategies, playing with different comps, seeing what's good, seeing what's useful, seeing what we need to kick, what we can, mind control, what we can CC and skip past. And I've been just having an absolute blast. So again, I apologize for like the lack of content. But I hope if you liked videos like this, if you'd like to see more commentary over some of the keys that I've ran, I'm hoping to get some more I'm working on this video, and then I'm gonna go run some more keys. I'm hoping to get a 14 or a 15 tonight. Now I can do a commentary on that as well. And then as the season progresses, I plan on keeping up, with the leaderboard and hopefully in the top bracket of Guardian Druids. And let me know if you guys enjoyed this. So yeah, that's an awkward ending. So have a good night, guys. Take care.